A name can hold so much or so little. Before the headlines, before the fear that gripped a nation, he was just Moses Sithole. Born in 1964 in a township near Boksburg, South Africa, his beginnings were steeped in hardship. His father died when he was a young boy. His mother, unable to cope, abandoned him and his siblings. This act of abandonment sent him into the stark, often brutal world of a state-run orphanage. It's a story you hear time and time again in these situations. A life that starts with a fracture, a foundational crack that widens over the years. You have to wonder what goes on inside the mind of a child left so utterly alone, what seeds are planted in that lonely soil. The system that was meant to protect him seemed only to harden him. Life in the orphanage was not a sanctuary. It was, by many accounts, a place of neglect and abuse. These early years shaped the man he would become. He developed a deep, simmering resentment, particularly towards women. He would later claim that a female relative had falsely accused him of rape, an event that led to his first stint in prison. It's here, in these formative traumas, that the narrative of his later horrors begins to take shape. It's a tangled web of personal grievance and societal failure, a story that is both uniquely his and tragically familiar in the annals of crime. He drifted through his early adult life, a ghost in the new South Africa. He held odd jobs, he married, he even had children. On the surface, he was just another face in the crowd, navigating the complexities of a country in transition. But beneath this veneer of normality, a darkness was festering. His anger, his sense of betrayal, it all curdled into something monstrous. He saw women not as people, but as symbols of his own pain and rejection. It's a chilling thought that someone so seemingly ordinary could be nurturing such a profound and deadly hatred, waiting for the right moment to let it loose upon the world. The backdrop to this was a nation undergoing immense change. It was the mid-1990s. Apartheid had just fallen. South Africa was grappling with its newfound freedom, a time of great hope, but also of great uncertainty and social upheaval. In this chaotic landscape, where the old structures of control were crumbling and new ones were yet to be firmly established, a predator like Moses Sithole could thrive. He moved through the cracks of a society in flux, exploiting the vulnerabilities of a population distracted by the grand drama of nation-building. His story is inseparable from the story of his country at that specific, tumultuous moment in its history. The killing began in 1994. The locations were specific. Atteridgeville, a township west of Pretoria, Boksburg, his old stomping ground, and Cleveland, an area near Johannesburg. This geographical spread gave him his first and most enduring nickname, the ABC Killer. It was a simple, almost childish moniker for a campaign of unspeakable brutality. The name stuck because it was easy to remember. A terrifyingly simple label for a complex and horrifying series of crimes. The media latched onto it, and soon the ABC Killer was a household name, a specter haunting the very places his name described. Fear had an acronym. The method was chillingly consistent. Sithole presented himself as a businessman. He was charming, plausible. He would approach young women, often those looking for work, and offer them jobs at a charity he claimed to be starting. It was a cruel and calculated deception, preying on the hopes and aspirations of his victims in a country where opportunity was scarce. He would promise them a future, a way out of poverty. Then, he would lure them to a secluded spot, a patch of open veld or an abandoned field, under the guise of showing them the new office or taking them to a final interview. Hope was the bait in his trap. Once they were isolated, the mask of the charming benefactor would fall away. The reality was a nightmare. He would attack, rape, and then strangle his victims, often using their own clothing to end their lives. The bodies were left where they fell, discovered days or even weeks later in the lonely fields. The sheer coldness of it is hard to comprehend. The meticulous planning, the feigned kindness, all leading to an act of ultimate personal violence. This wasn't random chaos. It was a hunt. He was methodical, patient, and utterly without mercy. He was enjoying the power he held over these women in their final moments. The press gave him another name, the Gauteng Killer. Gauteng is the province that encompasses Johannesburg and Pretoria, the heart of his hunting grounds. This name spoke to the scale of his terror. He wasn't just a local problem, he was a regional menace. For over a year, from July 1994 to his final capture in late 1995, he moved through the province like a phantom. He murdered at least 38 people, almost all of them women. The fear was palpable. Women were afraid to walk alone, to talk to strangers, to look for work. He had single-handedly changed the emotional landscape of the region, casting a long, dark shadow over daily life. The police were under immense pressure. The country was watching. The body count was rising. They assembled a special task force, a team of dedicated detectives determined to stop the killings. But Sithole was clever. He was careful. He left little evidence behind, and the vast, often impoverished areas where he operated made traditional police work difficult. The investigation was a slow, painstaking process of connecting the dots between seemingly separate murders. They had a pattern, a location, a method, but they didn't have a face or a name. It was a race against time, with each new discovery of a body adding to the urgency. The breakthrough came from an unlikely source, a phone call. Sithole, in an act of supreme arrogance, had started contacting the police and a journalist at the Star newspaper. He wanted to talk. He wanted to claim responsibility for the murders. It was a classic and ultimately fatal mistake made by many serial killers. The need for recognition, for his terrible work to be acknowledged, outweighed his instinct for self-preservation. He spoke of his motives, his anger, his supposed justifications. He was trying to control the narrative, to explain himself to the world, but in doing so, he gave the police the one thing they needed most: his voice. Using advanced voice recognition technology, which was still relatively new at the time, investigators were able to trace the calls. They narrowed down his location. They also had a crucial piece of information from one of his surviving victims, who had managed to escape. She had identified him. The net was no longer wide, it was a targeted drag net. In October 1995, police surrounded a building in Johannesburg where they believed he was hiding. The chase was on. Sithole, realizing the game was up, tried to flee. He was cornered, and in a final, desperate act, he was shot and wounded by the police as he tried to attack them with an axe. The man who had terrorized Gauteng for over a year was finally in custody. The reign of the ABC killer was over. The arrest brought a collective sigh of relief across the country. The Phantom had been given a face. He was no longer a terrifying myth, but a wounded man in a hospital bed, his power broken. The investigation that followed his capture was methodical, linking him conclusively to dozens of crime scenes. The evidence was overwhelming, a mountain of proof built from survivor testimony, forensic science, and his own foolish confessions over the phone. The long, dark chapter was closing. The trial of Moses Sithole was a national spectacle. It began in 1996 and laid bare the full, horrifying extent of his crimes. The courtroom listened in stunned silence as the prosecution detailed 38 murders, 40 rapes, and 6 robberies. He pleaded not guilty, spinning a convoluted tale of conspiracy and claiming he was framed. But his denials fell on deaf ears. The evidence against him was simply insurmountable. For the families of his victims, it was a period of agonizing testimony, of reliving their worst nightmares in a public forum. The trial was not just about one man, it was about seeking justice for the many lives he had destroyed. On the 5th of December, 1997, the verdict was delivered. Judge David Carstairs found Moses Sithole guilty. His sentencing was one of the most severe in South African history. He was handed a total of 2,410 years in prison. The judge specified that he must serve a minimum of 930 years before being eligible for parole. It was a sentence designed to ensure that he would never, under any circumstances, walk free again. He was sent to CMAX, Pretoria's maximum security prison, a concrete tomb for the country's most dangerous criminals. There, he would live out the rest of his days, a monster caged. He died in prison from health complications on December 12, 2017. The story of the ABC killer left an indelible mark on the South African psyche. It emerged during a time of fragile hope, a brutal reminder that the demons of violence and misogyny had not been vanquished with the old political order. His crimes exposed the vulnerabilities of women, particularly poor Black women, in the new society. He became a symbol of a deep-seated sickness, a manifestation of what can happen when personal trauma is allowed to fester in a society grappling with its own deep wounds. He forced the nation to confront an uncomfortable truth about the violence that still lurked in the shadows of its new dawn. Even today, in 2025, his name is spoken with a shiver. Moses Sithole, the ABC killer, is remembered not just for the number of his victims, but for the cold, calculated cruelty of his methods. He exploited hope. He hunted the vulnerable. He turned the alphabet, a symbol of learning and communication, into a map of death. His legacy is a cautionary tale, a dark chapter in the country's history that serves as a permanent reminder of the long and difficult road to creating a truly safe and just society for all. The scar he left remains, a faint but persistent outline of the terror he once inspired.